Ah, yes, Japan. One of the most fascinating places on this planet. Yes, from sushi and anime to sumo and cherry blossoms, this place certainly has a lot to offer. But how did Japan come to be? How did it all start, and what happened in the past? Well, my friends, that's exactly what we're here for. Ya minna, watashi wa Alexi desu, and today we're going to dive deep into the history of Japan. Our story begins many a year ago, back when Japan was covered by hunter-gatherers and a lot of pot. No, not that one, this one. Then these interesting people from Korea came over with fancy rice and efficient weaponry. These peoples were known as the Yaoi. I mean Yayoi, damn it! Then agriculture became more of a thing, which resulted in a lot of these farming kingdoms. This one here, specifically, is the most important one. It's known as Yamato, and it's ruled by this guy, also known as an emperor. Anyway, this guy, emperor of... How do you... Bayekje? Baekje?
It's Bjecht.
Oh, okay. Anyway, this guy, Emperor of Bjecht, sent a guy to Japan with various gifts, including an image of the Buddha, some ritual objects, and sacred texts. A lot of people hated Buddhism, and a lot of people didn't hate Buddhism, and that caused some political struggles until Buddhism became the new state religion sponsored by the government. Then the government was taken over by these fine chaps who later made some reforms, like enhancing the power of the imperial court, like China. Speaking of China, they refer to Japan as Wa, which literally means dwarf, which is hilarious. And then Japan stole China's writing system, wrote lots of poetry, and 2 books about themselves. Then, after lots of capital city moving, they had it sit still for once, and then they conquered the north. This lad, named Kukai, went to China to learn about this other branch of Buddhism called Zen Buddhism. He comes back, creates this new thing called kana, and does a ton of poetry. Then, the royal palaces were so busy with doing all this art, they really didn't pay too much attention on running the country. So how, may I ask, are you supposed to protect yourself when no one is looking after you? Well, it's easy. You
hire a samurai.
Those who could afford it, so the incredibly rich and powerful, hired samurai for protection. Over time, the samurai got all powerful. So powerful, they were more powerful than the government, so they made their own government, right here. Let me just... Hold on a second. Here! They let the emperor be all fancy, but the shogun was really in control. Uh-oh, watch out, Japan, here come the Mongols. We know them, right? The big, tough, sometimes bloodthirsty warriors who conquered the entire universe. And so they set sail to Japan, and wow, look over there, it must be a typhoon, and whoa, there go the Mongols. And then they try again, fight with the Japanese a little, and... What? Well, would you look at that? It's another typhoon, and zoom go the Mongols again. Anyway, the emperor overthrows the shogun, and the shogun overthrows him. He moves to Kyoto and makes a new shogunate. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Who's Gonna Be the Next Shogun. I'm your host, and today we are going to pick out who the next shogun is gonna be. This guy and this guy. I'm sorry, we just received word that the palace caught on fire and burned down. Apparently there was war. So tune in next week for... Then the whole country looked like a shattered plate for some time, and everyone started to fight each other. Wow, look, it's Europe selling some fancy technology like guns, and now everyone is fighting with each other. Now with guns. This clan is ready to take control of the capital, but it has to crush this smaller clan which is in the way. They fight, and the smaller clan wins. Then the leader of that clan invades the capital. Then he almost conquers all of Japan when someone who works for him kills him, and then this other guy kills the guy who killed the first guy, and then he finishes conquering Japan. He made sure the peasants didn't own swords, made some rules, fantasized about invading Korea, then China, fails, and dies. But before he died, he told these 5 guys to look after his son until he's old enough to be the next ruler of Japan. And they were like, nah man, it's probably gonna be this guy. Not that little puny, pathetic kid. It's gonna be this guy, not this guy. A lot of people liked him, and a lot of people hated him. He fights with this guy, wins, and creates a new government that was called Edo. Later, Japan began to isolate itself from the rest of the world, and then after a solid 214 years of prosperity, the United States shows up in a lot of these gunboats commanded by this lad and forces Japan to reopen. Japan was like, okay. These 2 clans hated that and overthrew the shogunate and put this guy in charge, moved him to Edo, and renamed it to Tokyo, literally meaning Eastern Capital. Then, in 1904, Japan and Russia fought a war, which ended up being a humiliating defeat for the Russians. In 1910, Japan was like, hey Korea, let me just... And then World War I happened, and Japan took this part of China and all of these little islands in the South Pacific, which belonged to Germany. But now belong to Japan. You know, long story. Here's Bill Wirtz to explain the whole
And
thing.
the next thing on their list is this part of China and lots of tiny islands. All that stuff belongs to Germany, which just had war declared on it by Britain because Britain was friends with Belgium, which was being trespassed by Germany in order to get to France to kick France's ass because France is friends with Russia, who was getting ready to kick Austria's ass because Austria was getting ready to kick Serbia's ass because someone from Serbia shot the leader of Austria's ass. Actually shot him in the head. And Britain is currently friends with Japan, so you know what that means. Duh,
Japan should take the islands.
which they wanted to do anyway.
After the war ended, Japan joined the League of Nations. And then Mr. Hirohito the Dorito took power. Japan then violated one of the League of Nations' policies by invading Manchuria and later China. Wow, look, it's the Nazis. It looks like they need some friends. So they call Italy, then Japan, saying, you want to be my friend? And so they became friends. Now Germany is getting very big, very fast. And so is Japan, who later was like, hey America, nice boats you got there. Be a shame if someone were to Banzai! That really pissed off the United States, who, as a result, joined the war and helped crush the Nazis and later the Japanese. Then they were like, hey Japan, nice two cities you got there. Be a shame if someone were to... Now, with the Americans nuking the Japanese and the Soviets invading Manchuria, Japan really had no choice but to surrender. And so it was with the Second World War. The United States then pitched in a little and installed a new, more democratic government with an economic miracle happening later. American influence has lasted, especially in the Japanese language, such as the word for ice cream, table, ball, cream, and even condom. Japan starts making cars, TVs, video game consoles, and the economy goes bonkers. Then the miracle wears off in the 90s, the economy struggles, but despite that, this time saw the spread of pop culture such as video games and anime. In 2011, Japan was slapped by a massive earthquake, which also triggered a nuclear meltdown. How lovely. In 2019, Emperor Akihito stepped down due to health concerns, and his son, Naruhito, took power. And that, my friends, is the history of Japan.